In August 2005, the world watched as Israeli soldiers forcibly removed Jewish settlers from their homes in Gaza. Children cried as they were carried from the only homes they'd ever known. Synagogues were demolished. Greenhouses that had fed thousands were left behind as gifts to the Arabs of Gaza. This is the story of Israel's grand experiment in peace, a unilateral withdrawal from Gaza that would test whether territorial concessions could lead to coexistence. 20 years later, the results are in. And they tell a story that every advocate of the two-state solution must confront. The Gaza disengagement wasn't just a policy decision, it was an act of faith. Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, the architect of Israel's settlement enterprise, had become the unlikely champion of withdrawal. He believed that by giving Palestinians complete control over Gaza, Israel could demonstrate its commitment to peace while maintaining security. 21 Jewish communities, built over decades, were evacuated. 8,000 Israelis left their homes. The Israeli military, which had protected these communities for 38 years, packed up and departed. Not a single Israeli soldier or civilian remained in Gaza. The world applauded. Here was proof that Israel was serious about peace. The Palestinians would now have their chance to build a functioning society, to prove they could govern responsibly, to show that a future Palestinian state could be a partner for peace rather than a source of terror. International aid poured in. The European Union pledged hundreds of millions. The United States committed to supporting Palestinian institution building. Even the greenhouses, sophisticated agricultural facilities that had employed thousands of Palestinians, were purchased by international donors and gifted to the Palestinian Authority. The optimism was palpable. This was to be the litmus test for the two-state solution. If Palestinians could turn Gaza into a thriving, peaceful territory, it would pave the way for a West Bank, Judea and Samaria withdrawal and the establishment of an Arab-Palestinian state. If they couldn't, well, that possibly was too grim to contemplate. The test began failing almost immediately. Within hours of Israeli withdrawal, Palestinian crowds looted and destroyed the very greenhouses that had been gifted to them. The infrastructure that could have provided jobs and food security was reduced to rubble in fits of celebration. But this was just the beginning. In January 2006, Hamas, a designated terrorist organisation by the United States, European Union and Israel, won a stunning victory in Palestinian legislative elections. The party whose charter called for Israel's destruction, whose suicide bombers had killed over 1,000 Israeli civilians during the Second Intifada, was now the democratically elected government of Gaza. The international community was stunned. This wasn't part of the plan. The supposedly moderate Palestinian Authority, led by Mahmoud Abbas, was supposed to consolidate control over all Palestinian territories. Instead, Palestinians had chosen the path of radical Islam and continued warfare. Hamas wasted no time in demonstrating its priorities. Instead of building schools and hospitals, it began building rockets. Instead of creating jobs, it created terror tunnels. The civilian infrastructure that Israel had left behind was systematically converted into military assets. Apartment buildings became rocket launch sites. Mosques became weapons storage facilities. Schools became command centres. By 2007, Hamas had violently expelled the Palestinian Authority from Gaza in a brief but brutal civil war. The moderates, who were supposed to be Israel's peace partners, were literally thrown off rooftops. Gaza was now entirely under the control of an organisation committed to Israel's destruction. The rockets began falling on Israeli towns almost immediately after the withdrawal. At first, they were crude Qassam rockets with limited range and accuracy, but Hamas was learning, adapting, improving. With each passing month, the rockets flew farther and carried larger warheads. Sderot, the Israeli town closest to Gaza, became a laboratory for life under constant rocket fire. Children developed post-traumatic stress disorder. Families slept in bomb shelters. The local economy collapsed as businesses fled. This was the price of Israeli withdrawal, the transformation of a border region into a war zone. Israel's response was measured, almost restrained. Airstrikes targeted rocket launch sites and weapons facilities, but Hamas had learned the lessons of asymmetric warfare. It embedded its military infrastructure within civilian areas, knowing that Israeli strikes would inevitably cause civilian casualties, which could then be used for propaganda purposes. The international community that had praised Israel's withdrawal now criticised its attempts to defend itself. The same world that had demanded territorial concessions condemned the military operations necessary to protect Israeli civilians from the consequences of those concessions. By 2008, Hamas had built up sufficient military capability to warrant a major Israeli operation. Operation Cast Lead marked the beginning of a new reality: periodic wars between Israel and Gaza that would continue for the next decade and a half. The pattern was established. Hamas would build up its military capabilities, launch increasingly sophisticated attacks on Israeli civilians, and Israel would respond with military operations to degrade Hamas's capabilities. Each round of conflict would end with ceasefires that Hamas would eventually break. Operation Cast Lead in 2008, Operation Pillar of Defense in 2012, Operation Protective Edge in 2014. Each operation demonstrated the same reality. Hamas had no interest in building a peaceful society. Its only goal was the destruction of Israel, and it was willing to sacrifice its own people to achieve that goal. The human cost was staggering, but the strategic implications were even more profound. Gaza had become a terrorist statelet, a launching pad for attacks on Israel that grew more sophisticated with each passing year. The territory that was supposed to be a model for Palestinian statehood had become a cautionary tale about the dangers of territorial concessions to extremism. Meanwhile, life in Gaza deteriorated. Instead of the prosperity that peace could have brought, Gazans lived under the rule of a theocratic dictatorship that diverted resources from civilian needs to military preparations. The siege imposed by Israel and Egypt in response to Hamas's military build-up created additional hardships, but Hamas's priorities remained unchanged. Even as its people suffered, it continued to prioritize the destruction of Israel over the welfare of its own citizens. The true test of Gaza's intentions came on October 7, 2023. After 18 years of Israeli withdrawal, after billions of dollars in international aid, after countless opportunities to choose the path of peace and prosperity, Hamas launched the most barbaric attack in Israel's history. Over 1,200 Israelis were slaughtered in a single day. Babies were burned alive, women were raped and murdered, entire families were wiped out. Concert-goers were hunted down and killed. The elderly were kidnapped from their homes. Children were taken hostage. This wasn't resistance, it was genocide. The attack was planned and executed with meticulous precision, designed to inflict maximum civilian casualties. Videos of the atrocities were shared on social media by the perpetrators themselves, proud of their work. The international community that had pressured Israel to withdraw from Gaza in 2005 now witnessed the fruits of that withdrawal. The territory that was supposed to demonstrate Palestinian readiness for statehood had instead become a base for launching the worst terror attack in Israeli history. The 240 hostages taken on October 7th, including babies, children, and elderly Holocaust survivors, became symbols of Hamas's true nature. A movement that claims to seek liberation had revealed itself to be nothing more than a death cult. The Gaza experiment is over. The results are definitive. After 20 years of complete Israeli withdrawal, after billions in international aid, after every opportunity to build a peaceful society, Gaza chose war. Not just war, but genocide. Not resistance, but rape and murder of innocents. The implications for the two-state solution are unavoidable. If Palestinians cannot build a peaceful society in Gaza, a territory they've controlled completely for nearly 2 decades, how can they be trusted with a state in Judea and Samaria or the West Bank? If withdrawal from Gaza led to October 7th, what would withdrawal from the West Bank lead to? The advocates of the two-state solution have no answer to the Gaza test. They cannot explain why this time would be different. They cannot guarantee that a Palestinian state would become another Gaza, another terrorist statelet dedicated to Israel's destruction. Israel gave Gaza everything the two-state solution promised: complete withdrawal, international support, and the chance for self-determination. The response was not peace, but the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. The children forced from their homes in Gush Katif in 2005 are now adults. Many of them served in the Israeli forces that responded to October 7th. They understand better than anyone the price of Israeli concessions and the nature of the enemy they face. Gaza was supposed to be the proof of concept for Palestinian statehood. Instead, it became the proof that some conflicts cannot be resolved through territorial concessions to movements that remain committed to genocide. The Gaza test is over. The two-state solution has failed. The only question now is whether the international community will learn from this failure or continue to demand that Israel repeat the same dangerous experiment. For 20 years, Israel waited for Gaza to choose peace. The wait is over. The choice has been made, and the world must now confront the reality that some dreams of peace are nothing more than nightmares of war. Before we finish, I just want to share with you something really important. We are told that Israel's actions are the cause of the Israeli-Arab conflict, but we've just released a groundbreaking documentary proving that Arab Islamic Jew hatred far predates Israel's re-establishment. This is a critical fact that everyone needs to learn about. Have a watch of our trailer for our new JTV Plus documentary entitled Arab Anti-Semitism Before Israel's Re-Establishment. Picture yourself, it's 1834 and you're a Jew living in Tzfat, which is a northern city in Israel, then under the Ottoman Empire. Your family is part of this ancient city's spiritual heart for generations. You study Torah, you trade in the market, and live quietly among your Arab neighbours. But one day, a mob storms your street, shouting, "Kill the Jews!" Your home is looted, your synagogue burned, your loved ones beaten. This isn't about Israel. Israel won't exist for 114 years. This isn't about settlements, the IDF, or the 1948 displacements. This is raw, violent hatred aimed at you for being a Jew. And it's not just in Palestine, it's part of a centuries-old story of anti-Semitism woven into Arab and Islamic history, from the dawn of Islam to the streets of Hebron. The claim that this conflict began with Israel's creation, the Nakba, or modern policies, is a farce, a distortion that collapses under history's magnifying glass. Welcome to JTV Plus. I'm Ollie Annersfeld, and today we're uncovering a history too often buried, the relentless anti-Semitism among Arabs in Palestine before 1948, rooted in a broader Arab and Muslim hostility that began with Islam's inception in the 7th century. To watch this JTV Plus documentary and access much more premium content, click on the link in the video description.